Hi, scholars and parents. This is Ms. Palmer. I am about to do a different kind of video because this is a different kind of homework. It is your CR packet from Math on Friday, and you are asked to complete the entire packet and to check your work to make sure that it's correct because it's going to be graded. So I'm going to go through all of the questions, which means it's going to be a long video. I'm going to pause periodically to hold up a Post-it to show which questions I'm on, so that way, if you're searching through the video, you can easily spot where you need help. I'm going to get started with numbers 1 through 4. That starts on page 3. The first question is adding fractions. And whenever you add fractions, the first thing you have to do is find a common denominator. So I found a common denominator for 9 and 6 over here using my table. And at first I went all the way to 54, but then I looked back and realized I actually can use 18. That will keep my numbers smaller, so it will be easier and I won't make mistakes. Then I go back and I set up my problem. I know 18 is going to be my common denominator, so I slot that in first. And then I need to figure out 9 times what will give me 18. 9 times 2. Whatever I do to the bottom, I do to the top. And 7 times 2 gives me 14. On the bottom, 6 times 3 gives me 18. Do the same thing to the top. 6. Sorry, my numbers are backwards. 2 times 3 gives me 6. When I add them together, I get 20/18. I can't stop there because that's an improper fraction. So I figure out how many times can 18 go into 20. Once. 1 times 18 is 18. I have 2 left over. So my answer as a mixed number is 1 and 2/18. I can divide the top and the bottom by 2, and that would give me 1 and 1/9 in simplest form. Number 2. So for 2 and 3, you're being asked to simplify it to a mixed number. It's already a mixed number, but it's a mixed number with an improper fraction. I put a box around the part that's the improper fraction because that's what I need to get rid of. I got to figure out how many times can 6 go into 15. I know it can go in twice because 6 times 2 is 12. 2 times 6, 12. I have 3 left over. I write this part as a mixed number here. 2 is my whole number, 3 is my numerator, and 6 is my denominator. But I can't forget about that 3 that I started with. So I add 3. I get 5 and 3/6, and I can divide 3 and 6 by 3, so I end up with 5 and 1/2 in simplest form. On the next one, it's exactly the same thing. I have a whole number. I have a fraction that's improper, and I need to get rid of that. So 5 goes into 10 2 times. 2 times 5 is 10. I have nothing left over. So when I use this to write a mixed number, I get 2 as my whole number, 0 as my numerator, and 5 as my denominator. 0/5 just can cancel out. We don't need that, so it just becomes 2. Can't forget about that 4. 2 plus 4 is 6, and that's my final answer. Number 4. Number 4 is subtracting with regrouping. So the first thing I need to do is find a common denominator, which I do over here using my table. I find 20 as my common denominator, and I set up my problem vertically. 5 and 1/4 minus 1 and 2/5. Since I know 20 is my common denominator, I plug that in, and then I figure out 4 times what gives me 20. 4 times 5, I do that to the top as well. I get 1 times 5 gives me 5, and I bring over my whole number. On the bottom, 5 times 4 gives me 20, 2 times 4 gives me 8, and I bring over my whole number. But 5/20 minus 8/20, I can't do that. So I loop my work over here, and I have to regroup. 5 and 5/20 can become, the 5 here, this part, can become 4 and 20/20. Because 20/20 is 1 whole. 4 and 1 whole is 5. But I can't forget about the 5/20, so that tacks on, and I simplify it to 4 and 25/20. Now I can subtract 4 and 25/20ths minus 1 and 8/20ths is 3 and 17/20ths. And there is nothing that goes into both 17 and 20, so this is simplest form. I'm about to go on to problems 5 to 8. Problem number 5. 7 divided by 4. 7 divided by 4. Before I even go into this, I want to make sure that you know the trick. Division and fractions are related. 7 divided by 4 is actually the same as 7/4. The 7 becomes the numerator and the 4 becomes the denominator. So anytime you see two whole numbers divided, you can do this. You can make the first number the numerator and the second number the denominator. I want you to make sure you know the number way so that when you can prove that your picture matches up. Okay, so I took 7 boxes because that's what I had to start. 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I have to break them into 4 groups. Group 1, Group 2, Group 3, Group 4. Now, 7 does not go into 4 very nicely. If it was 8, that would be awesome. It would be 2, would be my answer. But it doesn't go in evenly. So what I can do is I can break each of my boxes into 4 pieces, because then I'll have enough pieces to break up evenly. Once you do that, you get 28 pieces in total, because 7 times 4 is 28. Now, 28 is a number we can break into 4 groups. 28 divided by 4 is 7, so we get 7 sections in each group. But 7 is not my answer because each of these little pieces is not a whole, it's a fourth. The value of each piece, each of these 28 pieces, is 1/4. So if I have 7 1/4, that's the same as 7/4. So here we've proven with a picture what we know to be true just based on our division up top. Number 6 is exactly the same type of problem. For the purposes of making it simple, I changed my number to 3. I apologize if I forgot to tell you to do that in class, but I'll go through it as an example like that. If you want to keep it as 7, that's fine. Just make sure you show your work correctly. 3 divided by 8. I know it's going to be 3/8 because the first number becomes the numerator and the second number becomes the denominator. Here's how I can prove it with a picture. I have 3 fraction strips and 8 groups. I can't break 3 into 8 evenly, so I have to divide up the fraction strips into pieces. I break them into 8 pieces, and each group will get 1 from each piece. So each group will get 3 pieces in total. The value of these pieces is 1/8, so 3 1/8 is 3/8. Number 7. 7 is multiplying fractions. Now, when we multiply fractions, we just multiply across. The reason we can do that is because we're taking a part of a part. It's not like when we're adding fractions because we can't combine pieces that are different sizes. With multiplying fractions, we're actually cutting up our pieces further. So we can multiply across. 2 times 3 gives me 6. 5 times 4 gives me 20. My answer is 6/20. I can also draw a visual model that shows this. I'm going to start with 3/4 because that's my first number. So I divide my box. This box represents a 1 whole. I divide my whole into 4 sections and I shade 3 of them. And I label it 3/4. In the other direction, I break it into 5 pieces and I just shade 2 of them. And I label it 2/5. The double shaded section, I put a big box around it, dark box. That's going to be my numerator. I have 6 pieces in my double shaded section. And then the number of pieces in the whole, which is 20, becomes my denominator. I also can simplify this answer because 6 divided by 2 is 3 and 20 divided by 2 is 10. So my final answer is 3/10. Problem number 8 is exactly the same thing. I start with 1/4 in this direction and I break it into 2/3 in the other direction. I shade 1/4, I shade 2/3. This is my double shaded section, so my numerator is 2. I have 12 pieces in total, so my denominator is 12. I get exactly the same thing when I multiply across. 1 times 2 is 2, 4 times 3 is 12. My final answer is actually 1/6 because I can divide the top and the bottom by 2. That was number 8. So I am moving on to 9 through 12. Number 9 is multiplying a fraction by a whole number. So I have 5/6 times 4. That means I have 5/6 4 times. 5/6, 5/6, 5/6, 5/6. I drew the fraction strips, I shaded in 5 out of 6, and I labeled them. Then I put plus signs in between because what we're doing is repeated addition, and that's the same as multiplication. I can just multiply across. There are 2 ways to get my answer. Let me go back. 2 ways to get my answer. I could count up all the number of sixths that I have, 1, 6, 2, 6, 3, 6, 4, 6, 5, 6, 6, 6, 7, 6, 8, 6, 9, 6, 10, 6, 11, 6, 12, 13, 14, 15, 6, 17, 18, 16, 17, 18, 19, 26. So my answer is 26. I get that from my picture. I could also get that by multiplying across. Whenever I multiply a whole number by a fraction, I want to make it easier on myself by putting a denominator under my whole number. 4 is the same as 4 over 1. Now I can multiply across. 4 times 5 is 20. 1 times 6 is 6. That is an improper fraction, so I want to simplify it. 6 goes into 20 3 times. 3 times 6 is 18. 20 minus 18 is 2. My mixed number is 3 wholes and 2 sixths up here. And that can simplify even further by dividing the top and the bottom by 2 to 3 and 1/3. Number 10 is exactly the same. I have 5 groups of 1/7. 1/7, 1/7, 1/7, 1/7, 1/7. I could count them up, and I know my answer is going to be 5/7. I could also get that by multiplying across. 5, I add my denominator of 1 so I don't get confused. 5 times 1 is 5. 1 times 7 is 7. There is no number that can go into both the top and the bottom. So this is my final answer. Number 11. Number 11, we're multiplying a mixed number by a whole number. We can represent that with a picture by drawing 3 groups of 1 and 2/5. So I have group 1, group 2, and group 3. I represent 1 and 2/5 by drawing a whole fraction strip that's shaded, and then a fraction strip that I divide into 5 pieces and I shade 2. I labeled it 1 and 2/5 so that it was very clear for myself. So 1 and 2/5 and 1 and 2/5 and 1 and 2/5. I can get my answer just by adding it all up. I have 3 wholes. I have 6/5 because 2 plus 2 plus 2 gives me 6/5. This is one of those ugly numbers where it's a mixed number that has an improper fraction. So I'm just going to deal with this part in the box. 5 goes into 6 one time. 1 times 5 is 5, and 6 minus 5 is 1. My mixed number is 1 and 1/5, but I can't forget about this 3. 3 plus 1 and 1/5 gives me 4 and 1/5 as my final answer. Number 12 is exactly the same. I have 4 groups of 2 and 1/3. This is group 1, group 2, group 3, and group 4. I labeled each one 2 and 1/3, and I represented it with 2 whole fraction strips and a fraction strip cut into thirds with 1 shaded. Again, I can get my answer by just adding them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 wholes, and 1, 2, 3, 4 thirds, because each of those shaded pieces is a third. This is improper. 3 goes into 4 one time. 1 times 3 is 3. 4 minus 3 is 1. My mixed number is 1 whole and 1/3. Goes here. They can't forget about the 8, so 8 plus 1 and 1/3 is 9 and 1/3. I am moving on to 13 through 15. Keep it up for one more minute in case people are searching the video. (13 through 15, we get into some division. I have a fraction divided by a whole number. Start by drawing my fraction because that's what I have. Think about I have 1/4 of a pizza. So I break it into 4 sections and I shade one of them and I label it 1/4. Then I need to break that 1/4 into 5 groups. So in the other direction, I cut it into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groups and I labeled them on the side. I only care about one of the groups. This is like saying I have 1/4 of a pizza, I share it with 5 friends, how much pizza does each friend get? I only care about what one friend gets, so I circle just the one in the top corner. And I get my answer as 1 out of 20. 1/20th of the pizza. 1/4 divided by 5 is 1/20th. Number 14 is the same. I have 1/6 divided by 3. I start by drawing 1/6 as a fraction strip. I shade 1 out of the 6 pieces and I label it. Then I need to break it into 3 groups. Group 1, Group 2, Group 3. I only want to know about one of the pieces, one group, so I circle that one. And I count my answer as 1 out of the total sections, 18. This is like 1/18 of the whole pizza. 1/6 divided by 3 is 1/18. Then finally, one thing, I guess before I move on to 15, I want to say one more thing about these division ones. It's the same, you can tell from the picture, it's basically the same as 1/6 times 1/3. So anytime you have a fraction divided by a whole number, you can turn it into a multiplication problem by making the whole number, into a fraction, 1/3. 1/6 times 1/3 also gives you 1/18. And last but not least, number 15. This is 7 divided by 1/4. That's asking me how many times can 1/4 go into 7? Or how many 1/4s are there in 7 wholes? So I start by drawing 7 wholes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then I break each of them into fourths. And I'm trying to figure out how many fourths there are in total. So to get my answer, I just count them up. I don't shade anything at all. I just count them up. And I get 28. The next thing I'm going to do is page 10. That technically should be numbers 16 through 25. That's what they would be called on your fractions tracker. However, I made a mistake in the numbering in the packet, so we're just going to call it page 10. Okay, it says match the word problem to the problem type. So for this page, you need to read each of the word problems and you need to figure out what are you doing in order to get your answer. For this page, I'm just going to show you an example. I'll show you an example for the first 3, and then I want you to do the rest on your own. So the first question says, Martha watched 3/4 of a movie on Saturday and 2/6 of a movie on Sunday. What was the total amount of movies that she watched over the weekend? When it's saying when you have two fractions and they represent the same thing. So she watched movie and she watched some more movie. What I need to do to get my final answer is to combine them or add them. So I'm adding fractions. So this matches with A right across. Here, Gabriella has 1/2 gallon of milk. She needs to pour 4 glasses of milk. What fraction of a gallon should she put in each glass? So she's only got 1/2. She's not going to get any more than that. And she needs to split it into 4 groups. So that's like 1/2 divided by 4. Let's see if there's an option that's a fraction divided by a whole number. That's option G. Divide a fraction by a whole number. And then we'll do one more together. Number 3. Jasmina has 1/3 of a gallon of orange juice. She drinks 1/2 of it at breakfast. How many gallons of orange juice did she drink at breakfast? So she starts with 1/3. And then she just drinks half of what she has. So she's not drinking half of the whole gallon, she's just drinking half of the third. That's multiplying a fraction by a fraction because we're taking a part of a part. That is option C, multiply a fraction by a fraction. Okay, I'm going to pause there with the word problems. If you are not sure how the rest of them match, I want you either to call me or your other math teachers, or you can also write a comment on the YouTube video and I will get back to you. But my cell phone number, in case you don't have it, whoops, made a typo, can't talk and write. Thank you for your patience. My cell phone number, in case you don't have it, is 313-418-1482. I would be happy to talk through the word problems with you. Now, the last piece that I will do is to go through the core homework. That's the part that's on decimals. I'm going to do the first 2 problems. First problem says, Antonio has 23 thousandths, David has 23 hundredths, and Robert has 23 tenths. If they combine all of their base 10 blocks, what number will they have? We haven't learned how to do thousandths yet. We're going to do that on Tuesday. But we can use the pattern that we learned on Friday to figure this out. So I drew my place value chart. My wholes or my ones, my tenths, my hundredths, and then my thousandths just come next. So I start by drawing what I have to start with in each section. I started with 23 thousandths, 23 hundredths, and I drew it incorrectly at first, I'm sorry, 23 tenths. Ignore what's in the top, 23 tenths. Whenever I regroup, that's what I need to do to get my answer. I need to regroup, but I start from the furthest right. I regroup from the right to the left. So I'm going to go to the thousandths because they're the furthest right. I'm going to see if I have enough thousandths to make a hundredth. It takes 10 thousandths to make a hundredth, 10 hundredths to make a tenth, 10 tenths to make a whole. I have 10, I actually have 20. So I circle each group. I circle a group of 10 and I bring it over to make a hundredth. And I circle another group and I bring it over to make another hundredth. Then I cross those out. I have 3 thousandths left and I write that at the bottom. In my hundredths place, I also have 2 groups of 10. I circle each group and I bring it over to make a tenth. I circle this one and I bring it over to make a tenth. Then those go away and I have the 3 over here that I started with plus the 2 that I brought over from my thousandths place. So I have 5 hundredths. I write that at the bottom. Then I go over to my tenths. I started with 23, but I also created 2 more out of my hundredths place, so I have 25. I've got 2 groups of 10. Here's a group and here's a group. I circle them both, and I take this group of tenths to make 1 whole, and this group of tenths to make 1 whole. I end up with 5 tenths left over and 2 wholes. So my final number is 2 and 553 thousandths. Let's do one more together. This one doesn't have thousandths. The question says, I have 15 tenths, 3 ones, and 27 hundredths. What's the number? Start by drawing your place value chart, ones, tenths, hundredths, and then draw what you have in each section. I have 27 hundredths, I have 15 tenths, and I have 3 ones. I regroup from right to left, so I start in my hundredths place. Do I have enough hundredths to make a tenth? Yes, because I have 2 groups of 10. I circle each group, and I bring each group over as a rod. Circle 1 group of 10 becomes a tenth, 1 group of 10, that becomes a tenth. And then those go away. I have 7 hundredths left over, and I write that at the bottom. In the tenths place, I had 15, and I made 2 more, so I have 17. Do I have enough tenths to make a whole? Yes, because I have 1 group of 10. I circle my group of 10, and I bring it over to the ones place. I have 7 tenths left over, and I write that at the bottom. Now, finally, I end up with 1, 2, 3, 4 ones. I write that at the bottom as well, and my number is 4 and 77 hundredths. Okay, that is all. If you have questions, again, please call. This homework will be graded. It will also prepare you for your IA on Monday. Have a good rest of your weekend.